Good morning. Welcome to the recording in progress. Welcome to the Friday meeting of the UW System Board of Regents. Glad to have you here. Let's take the roll.
Regent President Pasch. Here. Regent Vice President Bogus.
Here.
Regent Adams. Regent Atwell.
Here.
Regent Frankus.
Here.
Regent Cologne.
Here.
Regent Jones.
Here.
Regent Cruiser.
Here.
Regent Menedietz.
Here.
Regent Miller.
Here.
Regent Peterson.
Here.
Regent Prince.
Present.
Thank you. Regent Rye.
Here.
Regent Staton.
Here.
Thank you. Regent Tyler.
Here.
Regent Underly.
Here.
Regent Walks. And Regent Weatherly.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Are there board members who wish to declare any conflicts of interest regarding items in today's open session agenda? Regent Miller.
Avoid the appearance of a conflict of interest, I would like to recuse myself from the discussion and vote on item G in the Business and Finance Committee agenda.
Thank you. Others? Regent Atwell.
In order to avoid the appearance of a conflict of interest, I'd like to recuse myself from item G in the capital and budget planning.
Thank you very much. Please recuse yourself from discussing or voting on that item. Megan, please record Regents Miller and Atwell's declaration of conflict and recusal in the minutes. And now I will call upon Regent Miller to present the report from the Audit Committee.
Pasch. The Audit Committee met yesterday morning. Chief Audit Executive Lori Stortz reviewed the progress to date on the fiscal year 2023 audit plan. She confirmed that her office is making excellent progress on the plan and expects to finish the remaining fiscal year 2023 audits without delay. Ms. Stortz anticipates bringing more audit reports to the committee when we meet again in October. Ms. Stortz then provided a high-level summary of the results of audits recently issued by the Office of Internal Audit since we last met in June 2023. This includes executive summaries for the child care centers, controlled substances and research, research integrity, and working in isolation audits, as well as the payroll biennial audit report. A common theme emerged: the need for further oversight and controls in place at the system level. The committee asked Ms. Stortz to put the audit of child care centers across the UW system on a regular audit schedule, which she committed to do. The upcoming implementation of the ATP system was cited more than once as a tool that should help alleviate some of the comments that internal audit noted in their reports. Afterwards, Ms. Stortz presented a summary report of the Integrity Hotline activity for the period of July 1, 2022 through May 31st, 2023. She noted that since the hotline was rebranded, they are averaging about 20 more cases reported per year, and she thanked the chancellors for helping make this tool a success. Next, Ms. Stortz discussed the progress on closing audit comments. She stated that management continues to work diligently to address the audit comments, and her team works diligently to ensure the steps taken are taken to closure. Ms. Stortz noted that good cooperation between her office and management across the UW system. Lastly, Ms. Stortz presented the Chief Audit Executive Report, which included a brief discussion on internal control and fraud training and the global internal audit standards. Then Paige Smith, Chief Compliance Officer, presented an overview of the Risk Compliance Audit Pilot Program. The committee was very supportive of the approach led by Ms. Smith and the proactive nature of the program. We asked Ms. Smith to keep the committee updated. Next, Director of Youth Protection and Compliance, Pernicia Clifton, gave the committee an update on the progress of implementation of SYS 625, Youth Protection and Data Collection Policy. The Regent supported Ms. Clifton for her work in this important area and asked her to provide periodic updates to our committee. And lastly, we heard from Julie Gordon, Senior Associate Vice President for Finance, and Mark Hakinson, Controller at UW Crosse, who presented an update on clearing accounts. The committee was engaged with this topic and appreciated the approach taken since the audit report was issued last March. We asked Ms. Gordon to return and provide an update to the committee. The Regents thanked the participants for their ongoing efforts to support the UW system, and that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Miller. Now I'll call upon Regent Rye to present a report on the Business and Finance Committee.
Thank you, Regent President Walsh. The Business and Finance Committee acted on its agenda as follows. Item D, UW System Status Report on Large/High Risk Information Technology Projects. First, the committee approved the UW system status report on large or high-risk information technology projects. The report details 10 major projects across the system, 2 of which were completed since the February update, both under budget. For those still in progress, the report provides updates on each project schedule, scope, and budget. Supply chain and workforce issues continue to impact some projects, and for the Administrative Transformation Project, or ATP, the integration of ancillary systems remains a challenge. The total portfolio is now up to $257 million, a 2.5 increase from February. I'd like to point out that Regent Peterson pointed out a great success of 9 of our institutions in collaboration and a savings of $1 million a year. We've asked to have an update on when the 4 other institutions in our organization may also participate in that savings. So hopefully we'll get an update. Letter E, UW System Amendment to Service Agreement with Huron Consulting Group Incorporated. Next, the committee approved an amendment to UW Systems Agreement with Huron Consulting Group to increase the number of hours of professional services necessary to support the software implementation for ATP. These services will address the need to complete testing and configuration work by providing supplemental consultants to the current team. These costs will be offset by lower than expected in-house staff expenses resulting from hiring challenges and will not require the use of contingency reserves. Item F, UW System Amendment to Software as a Service Agreement with Workday Incorporated. The committee then approved an amendment to UW Systems Agreement with Workday, which provides the enterprise resource planning software for ATP. The amendment will add 3 new modules to provide critical functionality sought by the HR Governance Committee. These modules include candidate engagement, messaging, and Cloud Connect for Learning. As with the previous amendment, the $2.3 million cost does not jeopardize the program budget or require the use of any contingency reserves. Item G, UW System Service Agreement with AVAAP USA LLC and Strata Information Group. Next, the committee approved agreements with AVAAP USA and Strata Information Group to provide additional staff augmentation to ATP. These contracts do not add unbudgeted costs to the project, but offer UW System 2 additional vendors from which to add supplemental staff to support software implementation, again necessitated by the challenge in finding available talent. These agreements authorize expenditures of up to $5 million per contract, allowing the project team to quickly add resources as necessary. Next, the committee then heard an informational update on the fiscal year 24 annual operating budget for UW System. The UW budget is informed by the provisions of the state budget bill, which, as Vice President Sean Nelson shared, include a $32 million GPR reduction being held for release upon approval of the Joint Finance Committee, $21 million in cost to continue funding for prior year pay plan and fringe benefit expenses, and pay plan increases of 4% and 2% respectively over the next 2 years. In response to the information presented about the budgetary challenges ahead, the committee had a vibrant discussion and also discussed the needs to address structural deficits, particularly as annual declines in available reserves are projected to resume the downward trend that campuses were experiencing prior to the receipt of pandemic relief funds. With the state budget bill having been signed just this week, the board's approval of the UW annual budget will be deferred while the finance team finalizes the details of a proposal for the board's consideration at a future date to be determined. The committee also requested a timeline and update to our request back to Joint Finance Committee for the $32 million, essentially looking for a plan and a time for that plan to be presented to the board. Next, UW Systems Office of Trust Funds shared an update on the 403B Supplemental Retirement Program, which offers UW employees a voluntary tax advantage savings plan for retirement. Following the implementation of several program enhancements made effective in 2022, employee contributions rose 12% from the prior year. Program assets total nearly $3 billion with over 23,600 accounts. I'd like to point out all of this managed by 2 staff members. That was very impressive to us. Lastly, the committee received the cost benefit analysis of foundations and associated affiliated organizations report for the fiscal year 2021-22. The report notes that 80 foundations and affiliated organizations supported the missions of UW system institutions during that period. The universities received a total of nearly $380 million, an increase of over $40 million from the previous year, while providing $11.6 million in administrative support to these organizations. In conclusion, on behalf of the Business and Finance Committee, I now move approval of resolutions D, E, and F, and then I'll separately move approval of resolution G to accommodate a member with a declared potential conflict of interest.
Thank you. Is there a second? Any discussion, questions? All right, call the question. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Thank you.
I now move approval of resolution G.
Second? Thank you. Any discussion or questions? Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you, Regent Rock. Now we move to Regent Weatherly for the report of the Education Committee.
Thank you, Regent President. Yesterday, the Education Committee approved 2 degree programs, a modification to the undergraduate application fee structure, received a host presentation, and discussed strategic plan implementation at a campus level. First, we approved the Master of Science in Exercise Physiology at UW-Eau Claire. Second, UW-Oshkosh Bachelor of Science in Automation Engineering. And then we moved on to approval of the modification of the UW system undergraduate application fee structure presented by new Associate Vice President Julia Nahn, which maintains the current application fee of $0 at 10 of our 13 campuses for new undergraduate admissions, signaling the UW system's commitment to educational access for all students. After 3 free applications, subsequent applications will be $25, though campuses can still waive fees for financial hardships. While eliminating application fees on most campuses has led to large increases in applications and smaller declines in freshman enrollments than seen elsewhere, the additional applications have made it challenging for admission offices to determine how to direct scarce resources to maximize the number of applicants that turn into enrolled students. The resolution is one way to address the challenge while maintaining a focus on accessibility. We then heard a host presentation from UW-La Crosse's Provost Betsy Morgan, Radiation Therapy Program Director Melissa Weege, Nuclear Medicine Program Director Angela Wheeler, and students from the radiological science programs, including Radiation Therapy and Nuclear Medicine Technology. We learned why both professionally and often for deeply personal reasons, this field is a strong choice for students interested in undergrad health professional career. Finally, we discussed strategic plan implementation at the campus level. UW-Platteville Interim Provost Wayne Weber facilitated a discussion from panels from UW-Eau Claire, UW-River Falls, and UW-Whitewater, who provided examples showing how the 9 strategic priorities identified by the UW system plan apply and align with their unique context, how campuses work with UW system and collaborate with campus partners, and future strategic priorities, promising initiatives and potential impacts. Regent President, this concludes my report. Therefore, I move for adoption by the board resolutions C1 through C3 and D.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Thank you, Regent Weatherly. Next up, Regent Walks with the report of the Capital Planning and Budget Committee.
Capital Planning and Budget Committee met yesterday to consider 6 items. First, we approved the 3 projects included in the consent agenda, which included the sale of a small parcel to accommodate the new bus rapid transit system in Madison, 10 all-agency projects at La Crosse, Madison, Milwaukee, Oshkosh, Parkside, River Falls, and Whitewater, and 2 minor facilities renewal projects at Madison. Next, the committee approved, on behalf of UW-Madison, authority to increase the budget for the construction of the chemistry building's 2nd and 4th floor lab renovation project for an estimated total cost of $12,952,000 gift grant funds. This project was originally approved with a budget of $10,952,000 by this board in March. However, due to cost escalation increases based on lead times, labor shortage, and the like, this project had a shortfall of $2 million. The project renovates 2 locations, 17,000 square feet on the 4th floor of the North Tower, from unfinished space into research labs, faculty lounges, offices, research assistant offices, lab support spaces, and conference rooms. On the 2nd floor of the Daniels Building, approximately 2,000 square feet of lab space will be renovated into an educational suite. Both locations, including a full renovation of mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and fire protection systems. The next project, again on behalf of UW-Madison, requests authority to design and construct the Engineering Hall sprinkler piping and gas distribution piping Phase 2 project for an estimated total project cost of $10 million, gift grant funds. This project is Phase 2 of a 2-phase project that seeks to design and construct a fire suppression system and gas distribution piping system in the Engineering Hall. The first phase installed the base distribution infrastructure necessary to accommodate the installation of the systems in the East Wing. Phase 1 is nearly complete. Phase 2 extends the fire suppression system to protect the entire building and additional gas distribution infrastructure to support any remaining program spaces. The committee approved this project. The committee approved an increase to the budget of the UW-Madison Chemistry Addition and Renovation Project by $7,400,000 of residual general fund supported borrowing for a revised estimated total project cost of $140,500,000. The project demolished an obsolete building, constructed a new 10-level undergraduate chemistry teaching tower, and replaced critical heating and air conditioning exhaust systems serving the existing research and teaching labs in the Daniels and Matthews chemistry buildings. Excuse me. During the final testing of the facility before occupancy, a number of unforeseen issues arose that delayed the opening of the facilities, including fire safety issues and an unexpected significant mechanical system failure. As a result, upgrades were required to the smoke control system of the new tower. These upgrades are necessary to ensure code compliance and safety during building egress in the event of a fire. Additionally, the large exhaust dust system unexpectedly collapsed during the final testing and required a complete rebuild with adjustments. Additional upgrades were necessary to ensure exhaust safety moved out of the research labs. The Department of Administration is working with the Department of Justice to investigate the situation and put together a plan for seeking remuneration from various contractual parties. As plans for information becomes available, updates will be provided by staff. Next, the committee approved an increase to the budget of the UW-Madison Veterinarian Medicine Addition and Renovation Project by $24 million for a revised estimate total project cost of $152,103,000. This project constructs a new 3-story building and will provide space for the small animal clinic and connect it to the existing clinic, construct new research, animal biosafety level 3 and biosafety level 2 and 3 laboratories, and include new offices, conference rooms, and shared interaction spaces to support the teaching hospital. The scope of this project has been revised to include an update to an existing BSL-3 lab for a new researcher. The pandemic-related challenges of the past 3 years highlighted the importance of high-quality, secure biological research labs. To accomplish the additional scope, rework the mechanical systems to meet the need for specialized research and address additional project expenses due to unprecedented increases in material costs, supply chain disruptions, and the like, and increasingly a tight labor market, a total budget increase of $24 million is needed. 10 million of residual general, excuse me, I'm sorry, 10 million of residual general fund supported borrowing and 14 million of gifts and grants will fund the additional costs. The Department of Administration is working with the Department of Justice to investigate the situation and put together a plan for seeking remuneration from various contractual parties. As plans or information becomes available, we will provide updates. The last project the committee approved is to increase the project budget of UW-Madison's College of Letters and Science Academic Building, Levy Hall, by $27,550,000 cash and construct the project for a revised estimated total project cost of $115,991,000. This project creates a new unified home for the Department of History and 9 other ethnic studies departments, programs, and centers within the College of Letters and Sciences by consolidating the co-locating spaces currently spread across 8 facilities. This project continues the campus planning trend to realign the physical location of L&S departments into cohesive academic districts that are meant to foster collaboration between compatible departments. The increase in budget will address cost escalations related to inflation and ensure programmatic requirements of the departments are not cut from the scope. Additionally, it adds a cistern for improved stormwater management and removes 5 structures to facilitate construction of the building. This project was enumerated before the large increases in inflation hit the construction industry. We concluded the meeting with a report by Senior Associate Vice President Alex Rowe on the recently approved 2023 to 2025 biannual capital budget by the legislature. Excuse my voice, it's by the end of the week, I don't have one typically, I talk too much, I'm told. Madam President, that concludes my report. I move resolutions D1, D2, D3, E, F, H, and I.
Thank you. Is there a second? All right. Questions, discussion? Being none, all in favor of the resolution, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Regent Walks, I think you have item G.
Yes, I would move item G.
Okay, very good. Second? Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor of G, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Regent Walks. All right, now we're going to take a closer look at how the UW system program array aligns with workforce development needs. Our presentation this morning will focus on how universities identify new program areas that provide access for students to new majors and careers while also efficiently managing resources. This is a follow-up to a presentation made to the Education Committee last March. We have a number of provosts on hand to share their insights and experiences, and as you can see, they're about to join us at the table. To get us started, I will call on Associate Vice President Tracy Davidson from the Office of Academic and Student Affairs to lead off the presentation and introduce her fellow panelists.
There should be some slides. There they are. Thank you. Can you hear me? Yes?
Have your mic? Yeah.
Good, thank you. I think, I don't know if Johannes perhaps wanted to start with a few words about providing some context for what we're doing today. Would you like to
Sounds
do
great.
that? Thank you.
Sounds great. Thank you. Regent President, Board of Regents members, thank you very much for this opportunity. We actually did this presentation at the Education Committee, and I thought it was very revealing also for the Regents to learn more about all the hard work and the strategic planning that goes on a campus before it ends up at this board in 2 minutes to approve it. There's a lot of hard work and complexities that underlie the process. There's a lot of collaboration that needs to happen. There's a lot of work that we have to do on our campuses as provosts to get this done, and actually with campuses working together collaboratively with one another as we move forward. So it is very relevant. It is critical in terms of the strategic plan to understand workforce needs in the future. We also need to be more anticipating what will happen. We need to be more innovative. And then also just what is the process that underlies actually the closure of programs, but also the approval of new programs? And how do we make sure that we are strategically aligned with what is needed in the state and what are our internal strengths and opportunities that we can maximize? And I just want to thank Kate Burns with her team. I asked, when we started the process, she did a remarkable job with the team to come up with a creative way in which we can actually minimize time, maximize strategic collaboration, and really meet the workforce needs of our state. So those will be my few introductory comments. And Tracy, now I can give it back to you.
Thank you. Thank you. As Johannes mentioned, we're going to be talking about program array management in the UW system. And in this context, when we're talking about programs, we're talking about our academic majors. So the question at hand really is, what does our roster of academic majors look like on our campuses and across the UW system? And how does that roster evolve with time? So there's a couple things I'm going to talk about. I'm going to give a brief introduction today. I'm going to talk about the levers that provosts have on their campuses to shape and reshape that program array that they are in charge of. And I'm also going to give a very high level overview of the way that array has evolved system-wide over the past few years. We want to keep in mind that this process, like all our processes, evolves in the context of our strategic plan. Our strategic plan has several overlapping objectives, and many of those objectives ask us to work with our constituencies to meet the needs of the state. And in the context of program array, that means we're going to be trying to build array that helps our students succeed both professionally and personally. We're going to be working with our constituencies to understand what the workforce needs are, and then also trying to build an array that meets those workforce needs. So I think today, part of what we want folks to come away with is we want you to appreciate sort of the complexity and the levers that provosts have to navigate workforce needs. And when we're done, we're going to ask our provosts, we have a panel of provosts, and we're going to ask them to talk about what that looks like on the ground and how they apply those levers and do that work. So we're going to start with an introduction to UW System Administrative Policy 102, which in my office we affectionately refer to as SIS 102. SIS 102 basically spells out all the processes and procedures for taking those actions that you can take to manage program array. The one you're most familiar with is the approval of new programs. So that all those new programs come before the Board of Regents, and you're familiar with that final process. In a minute, I'm going to dive down into what that looks like, all the work that goes into bringing a program forward for your approval. But before I do that, I wanted to spend a minute and talk about some of the other probably less familiar actions that provosts have at their disposal to manage program array. So you might be familiar with actions that are around suspension or elimination of programs. We also have action that we call a redirect. And what we're talking about with a redirect is actually the redirection of curriculum. So provosts can take a program and redirect, refashion the curriculum so it better meets the needs of certain demographics or certain constituencies in their region. Generally speaking, we consider a program curricular change of 25 to 50% of change in the curriculum to be a redirect. And so that's another common action that provosts can take. They can also change the modality, the online modality of a program. So a program that's traditionally been face-to-face can be changed to be partially or fully online. And of course, that meets the needs of distinct demographics as well. So for example, non-traditional students can often benefit from a program moving to an online modality. Another example is creating an additional location. So provosts can, for example, take a master's degree program and move it and offer it, for example, face-to-face in a location off of campus. And again, that might meet the needs of a very specific, non-traditional demographic to do that. So those are some of the less familiar actions that provosts can take. So as promised, this is the process that we go through, the full process we go through when a new program is being proposed by a campus. So the first thing that happens, I'm going to march through this. I'm going to take this so I can look at the screen so I can see what I'm doing. Thank you. So the first thing that happens is an institution develops what's called an NOI, or a notice of intent. And the notice of intent is sort of a foundational document that describes what the institution has in mind in that program. So it will contain information, the name of the program, the disciplinary area, what market demand looks like, what student demand looks like, a brief introduction to what the financial impact might be to that campus. And that document is prepared and simultaneously submitted to the Office of Academic Affairs and to the provosts, all the provosts in the University of Wisconsin system. And that document is the first formal notification to system and to the other provosts that this institution intends to develop this program. Once that document is submitted, it's reviewed by our office and it's reviewed by all the other provosts. They may have questions about it. There may be concerns. They may see opportunities for collaboration. As necessary, our office will pull provost groups together to have those conversations, work through any questions, and address any questions related to the notice of intent. Ultimately, the notice of intent is approved by the AVP, either approved or denied, and in my office. And one of the things I wanted to talk about the NOI process is because I think it shows the degree to which this initial introductory process is both transparent and consultative. So by the time a program has gone through this NOI process and is approved a plan, we have a really good idea of where it's ultimately going to sit in the academic program array when we move forward. Once a program has been approved to plan, after it goes through this NOI process, campuses have 3 years to develop the documents that you're familiar with that come before the Board of Regents. So they have 3 years to pull together more detailed information. So they give us more detailed narrative about what's going on with that program. We get a more detailed cost and revenue analysis, so we understand the financial analysis more completely. And there's usually a letter of commitment from the provost. Those documents are all packaged together and again sent to the Office of Academic Affairs where they're reviewed. We send them to our budget folks for review. And mostly what we're doing in that initial review is making sure those documents are complete and making sure that they align with policy along all those fronts. Ultimately, those documents will go to Johannes's office, the Vice President's office, for review. And then Johannes will send them to the President's office for review. And the President's is actually who presents those documents then to the Board of Regents for final approval. So that's the full process for a new program approval. One thing I want to say is that this is, probably as it should be, this is the most involved process we have. All those other actions I talked about are much more simple, much more easy to navigate, but the program approval process is probably the most difficult process we have to navigate. Okay, so now I want to spend a minute talking about what this has looked like at the system level, what these actions have looked like over the last 5 years. So the data that I'm about to show you shows program actions that took place during the 2018 to 2022 academic years for the UW system. You can see that we have about 170 newly approved programs. And those programs fall, I'd say, into 3 general categories. So one is programs that are really directly meeting workforce demand. And I think the 2 programs we approved today are great examples of that. We approved a exercise physiology program, a master's in exercise physiology for Eau Claire, and we approved an automation engineering program for UW Oshkosh. And UW Oshkosh, that program is obviously representing a newly evolving workforce need in manufacturing with automation and engineering. Exercise physiology itself is, a standard, been around a long time sort of major, but I think because of changes in demographics, particularly aging population, we're seeing an increased need for people who have training in that area. So both of those programs sort of fit into that first category of meeting workforce needs. Another reason that provosts might put forward a program is accreditation. So for example, the Athletic Training Accreditation Organization recently changed their accreditation requirements so that a program has to be at the master's level rather than the bachelor's level in order to be accredited. So all the campuses that were in that space with athletic training programs had to regroup now and put forward master's training programs in order to have an accredited program. Finally, the third reason that we often see a program coming forward is what we call an elevation. So an elevation I like to give an example that's from my discipline. So I'm a biologist. So we could have a biology program that might have a series of courses that creates what we call a concentration, for example, in aquatic biology. So we have this aquatic biology concentration. Once campuses have run that aquatic biology concentration for a number of years, they have the faculty, they have the facility, they realize there's good student demand for that particular program, they are likely to elevate that to a formal major rather than a concentration under the biology major. So now they'll actually have an aquatic biology major. That can actually be very student-centered as well, because employers recognize that really the specific nature of the training that students have if they actually have an aquatic biology program on their transcript rather than just a biology program. So that can be a student-centered thing to do. I'd say since we've been keeping track, slightly more than 50% of the programs that are coming forward actually represent that type of program approval. So the approval of an elevated minor or an elevated concentration. So in addition to the program approvals, we talked about a number of actions that can take place for programs that already exist. So suspensions and eliminations. Eliminations are programs that are completely removed from that roster of academic majors. Suspensions are programs that are basically paused for a moment, oftentimes so a campus can regroup about, for example, about a redirection. Perhaps they want to reorganize a curriculum. So those things can happen. There's a limited amount of time a program can be paused before it's eliminated, but generally speaking, campuses can put that on the shelf for a while. Again, we talked about the redirected programs. So we've seen about maybe 45 programs in that period of time that were redirected, had their curriculum reorganized. And of course, changes to the online modality. About 80 programs during that time had changes to the online modality. All right, this is a diagram. It's very high level. It's very simple, but I pulled out STEM programs, business programs, and then sort of put everything else in a single basket I called other. But STEM and business in particular, because we see a lot of workforce demand in those two areas. And in the STEM area, I also included healthcare programs. And I'm going to do a little bit deeper dive on that in just a minute and show you some of what's going on there. But part of what's going on here, so on the left-hand side, you see programs that have been approved in those three categories. And the right-hand side, you see programs that have been suspended and eliminated. And the point that I wanted to make here is just that we're seeing the proportion of programs that are being approved are really in those high-need workforce demand areas. That's all that's going on there. So this is sort of the deep dive in the programs in the STEM areas. You can see by far we're seeing a large number of programs being approved in the health professions. And then I just wanted to point out that those other areas, the computer sciences, engineering, data science, we've seen some in cybersecurity that fall into some of those categories, some of those STEM areas that are meeting workforce demands. That's just meant to show where the bulk of those programs are landing. One last thing I wanted to point out, this is a diagram that shows the collaborative programs currently being offered across UW system. And when we talk about collaborative programs, we're talking about programs in which the curriculum, pieces of the curriculum are each offered by a different institution. And you can see for each collaborative program, the number of participating campuses for each collaborative. So in some cases, we have 5, 6, 7 partner campuses, and each of those campuses is in an online format, generally, offering a piece of the curriculum. And the thing about this model is that each of those institutions, even though they're only offering a piece of the curriculum, also confer that degree to students who are housed at their campus. So this means that we have 15 programs represented here, but it actually represents 73 sort of geographical opportunities for students to get one of these degrees. So it's an effective way to manage curriculum when we can pull together a collaborative program. I think you all received a report. We put together a report that just shows some of the academic collaborations going on across system. The previous diagram was probably in that report where we're talking about collaborative programs. Of course, again, by programs, we're talking about academic majors in this context. And there are lots of collaborations that take place at what we call the sub-major level. So curriculum that's being delivered that doesn't necessarily rise to the level of a major. So for example, the collaborative language program can deliver the sequence, the German sequence, for example, German 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's not a major, but it can be really important for some campuses, for some students, for some majors, et cetera. And that is the collaborative language program allows students from across the system to take some of those important language sequences. And again, takes advantage of different institutions offering different pieces of that. And the point here again is just that it's another tool in the tool belt for our provosts to manage how they are pulling their program array together and how they can be as efficient as possible with that. So with that being said, I just wanted to provide a little bit of a foundation for what the tools are, how they can be navigated, but truly all this work happens on the campus under the supervision of our provost on the campus. And so what we'd like to do now is I'll ask Provost Burns to lead our panel of provost members and help us understand how all this is applied at the campus level. Thanks, Kate.
Thank you, Tracy. It was really helpful to hear that overview. And so we're going to have the provost introduce themselves as part of their examples for how they manage that program array process at their campuses. So we're going to start off with Maria. Maria, could you help us understand how the oversight and evaluation process of a program works on a campus?
Thanks, Kate. My name is Maria Cuzo. I'm the proud provost of UW Superior. And I'd like to thank the Board of Regents for the opportunity to share this information. We are going to provide concrete examples of how our campuses practice accountability. And I'd just like to point out that for several years, we have heard the concerns of regents about whether or not campuses practice appropriate monitoring and accountability. And I'd like to affirm that those questions and curiosities are legitimate. And we want you to come out of this presentation with as much information as possible about what it is we actually do on the ground so that you are confident that we as campuses do hold ourselves accountable when it comes to managing program array. So I'm here to showcase how we as institutions hold our programs accountable for performance indicators. And these indicators either show healthy or unhealthy performance within various academic programs. Now, the most important variables most of the time are related to enrollment, recruitment, getting students, retention, keeping students. And there are also other efficiency aspects of what we look at in an academic program related to their operational contributions. Now, all of our institutions across system have some version of this kind of a policy. At UW Superior, we manage this important function through a clear policy and protocol process, which you all received a copy of in the pre-materials to this meeting. And I'm very proud to say that this policy and process was written line by line, co-created between administration at UW Superior and our faculty senate representatives. And that's a perfect example of shared governance in operation in the creation of policy. I would also, I have put at your places here this morning a flow chart, which will be a more visual aid to walking through what I'm about to share with you about this process. And what it shows you is a multi-step phased monitoring process that occurs on our campus on an annual basis. And I want to emphasize that this is an annual, ongoing, deep dive review of every academic program and its performance at UW Superior. So let's start with how this process begins. Every academic program every year receives a data summary through our dashboard process. I also sent you in advance of these meetings the definitions of the various dashboard indicators that we obtain data on and look at very carefully. So the first one is average number of graduates over 5 years. Now, system sets a rule of 5, an average of 5 over 5 years. We've raised that so that we have a warning zone available if a program is falling beneath or into a yellow or red zone. Second, the number of enrolled majors. This tells us about market demand with our students because students walk with their feet, and where they choose to major is a high indicator as to how the academic program serves their needs. The third is the average number of credits toward degree. We want students to graduate earlier rather than later, and that means we don't want to see accumulation of a lot of credits over 120 in order to earn the degree. That means money, and that means time for our students. The fourth one is average number of credits for transfer graduates. Keep in mind, transfer graduates come into our institution with a collection of credits or an AAAS, various types of associate degrees, and our job is to get them to obtain their 4-year major work primarily and graduate on time within a 2-year window. Fifth is average class sizes. We look at this one because if we have a lot of classes that are fairly low enrolling, that's an inefficiency. And we need to take a look at whether we need to raise course caps or other things. The sixth one is 4- and 6-year completion rates. And this basically shows us both our success in getting students to graduation and the time of that. And the seventh is the student credit hour production. And this helps us determine efficiency of our faculty and instructional staff and ensuring that we are being efficient with costs to educate our students. So once those 7 indicators are received by every academic program, and they get an actual dashboard that measures every single one of those via data, each academic program analyzes their own data to understand what the key indicators say to them about their performance and to make necessary changes. Now, this part of the process relies upon academic programs taking accountability for their own performance on these and continuously improving their performance. And in green programs, which are our top performers under this dashboard, this means them relooking at how they can elevate even further their performance because they're already solid and strong, but we want them to grow more. Now, academic programs take this very seriously, and as a result, we've had new major approaches like adding online writing or online additions to very popular on-campus majors like psychology, computer science, and transportation logistics. Every program looks at those 7 indicators and reports back to administration as to what their findings are. Now, 2 indicators are the most critical, and these have risen to the level of our metrics by which every program is measured. That's the number of enrolled majors and the 5-year graduation rates. And this is what can cause entry into the flow chart, into the continuous program monitoring policy. The metrics results launch a deep dive review of program performance and the need to perhaps provide administrative attention and administrative resources to help these programs turn around if they are struggling. The struggling programs are marked in yellow and red, and I put a handout in your place today that removed all program titles, but you are seeing an actual table of what this year's ultimate report on the red, yellow, green status was of our programs. So why are these the most important? If you have a program that doesn't have sufficient enrolled majors, you're going to struggle. If you don't have students graduating on time, you're going to struggle. And these 2 metrics are the best predictors of struggle. So this causes entry into the flow chart. Once a program enters by being yellow or red in the outcome, they begin a phased process to give their at-risk program time to assess the market for growing enrollment. They have to figure out what they're serving, who they're serving, and how we can do it better. They also directly look at employer workforce needs related to their major. So we put them back into the data to figure out what to do. And they are required to design a turnaround plan and, if necessary, obtain administrative financial support to help that plan to operate. That plan is basically on a short leash, 2 years, to show turnaround results in the yellow and green programs. Now, if a program cannot do it, they will proceed to under review for a very short time. And what this is a warning flag that if something doesn't turn around with this academic program, the next step they will enter into is program suspension. And program suspension then fits into the UW system, bigger model that Tracy talked about, which is on the road to elimination. So I have a very clear process. Now this year, 78% of our academic programs at Superior are green, and 22% were yellow and red. This is the third time we have run this process under my leadership, and we are very clear with the trends we see that a number of the yellow programs are soon going to be green. Their turnaround action plans have worked. Of the remaining red programs, there are action plans that are currently in place to turn around their performance, but they're on a shorter timeline now because that has not occurred successfully yet. We also provide dollars and encouragement to the green programs to keep up their great work. We work very closely with all programs on resources and meeting these particular metrics, and that's how we do it. It's a set cycle, a process with key deliverables that we have all agreed to on the campus, and we take accountability for the performance of our academic programs. Most importantly, it's a way of working directly between administration and the academic programs on their healthy performance in program array. So with that, I'll turn it back to Kate, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Maria. That was very helpful to hear that process. I'm wondering if we could go to Rob next to talk maybe a little bit on the program development side and to speak about your experiences at Parkside with that.
Rob Dukoff, UW Parkside. Thanks for the opportunity to share this statement. In the interest of time, I'm going to just share one of the two examples I have for you of how UW Parkside's program array benefits from partnerships that help us serve the needs of adult students. The first is our engagement with Academic Partnerships, LLC, an online program management company. We partnered with AP to help us develop and market an online MBA program. Enrollment in our in-person MBA program had eroded for years and had fallen to below 100 students. Based on experience with their clients, AP recommended we make a number of changes to our program. I should note that we retain sole authority for all governance and operational aspects of the program. AP handles program marketing and student recruiting, program support and implementation, and provides limited student services. We listen to their advice. Besides designing an exclusively online asynchronous MBA program, we reduced the number of preliminary course credits for students without business backgrounds from up to 21 credits to a maximum of 4 credits, reducing the time and cost for earning the degree. Concentrated courses from full to half semester for quicker completion to help students balance schoolwork with other professional and personal responsibilities. We added 6 majors and 3 more since then, giving students a variety of opportunities to combine the breadth of the MBA core curriculum with concentrations of interest. We increased the number of admission intakes from 2 to 6 annually, making it easier for students to start or resume the program more quickly once deciding they are ready. And we simplified our admissions process by eliminating requirements for the GMAT exam and an essay. In 4 years, the program grew to over 500 students. Faculty describe increases in student performance as the online MBA now attracts many more mid-career professionals looking for a high quality and affordable MBA. And the entire degree costs $18,000. My second example is actually better, but in the interest of time, I'll stop here.
That's a great teaser, Rob, but we also appreciate the example that you gave. Glenda Lee, I'm going to turn things over to you next. Would love to hear another example, I think, just to kind of round out this discussion in terms of how you handle things at UW Stout.
Thank you. Glenda Lee Rodriguez, Provost at UW Stout. So I'm going to try to just do a couple of quick teasers and happy to connect with you on programs. I want to talk about our Bachelor of Science in Automation Leadership, which was just approved. That's a product of significant work, not only our program advisory committee comprised of industry stakeholders, but also a partnership with the 2-year technical college system. So what that program is allowing us to do is really meet that workforce shortage and high demand in automation, but leverage on-site instruction at our technical college partner sites because they have amazing facilities located across the nation, really, that we can leverage with curriculum that then Stout can deliver to complete and provide a 4-year degree. Another example is Stout has a very, very long-standing program that was very tied to the print industry. It's currently called Graphic Communications. That program has been suspended, but it's in the process of recalibration, working with industry stakeholders and really leveraging, and we hope to recalibrate, and that program is relaunching soon in the fall of 24 with revised curriculum around the print industry, but much different than it once was, because now we are leveraging our packaging program, our graphic design program. So really seeing how print exists everywhere, it's just on new medium, right? There's so many new avenues. So we're working with industry very closely, and that's an example of a redirect. And I can talk about a program that was suspended and eliminated that also was a result of working with industry, and that's our Masters of Science in Construction Management. So in 2007 and 8, when the industry really hit a lull, our industry providers, our advisory committee members really wanted to see what we could do for construction professionals to get them advanced degrees, and they had higher mobility within the construction sector. With the boom in the construction industry now, we really started to see that impact enrollment at that master's level. Construction professionals can make six figures with a bachelor's degree. They have a lot of opportunity. So that program was suspended and it's been eliminated, but that was working very closely with our industry partners to just give you some examples from UW Stout.
Great. Thank you, Glenda Lee. I think it is really helpful to hear these kind of on-the-ground examples. David, you're actually going to shift our focus back to the more system-wide. So Tracy talked to us a bit about SIS 102 and kind of the overall process. I'm wondering if you could talk a bit about some of the recent changes that we can anticipate to see for SIS 102.
Yes, thanks, Kate. Good morning, everybody. David Travis, Provost, River Falls. Started my 6th year in this role, and I can tell you that this is not something we just started working on recently. We've been working on this. I can remember my first year as a provost. There were several of us that were new, and we recognized sometimes fresh eyes are good. We recognized that this policy wasn't working well. And as I'll go through a couple examples here, we felt like it needed to be changed. We began working on, in an informal way initially, ideas and recognizing changes that could potentially be made that would make the process better. We had a little pandemic in the way that slowed us down, but here we are finally under Johannes's great leadership and Tracy's work and the others here. We're really ready to show you the primary changes that we've made. So I'm going to give you the key takeaways here of really what are the key points that are changing here with the new policy that we're bringing in front of you. First of all, and you've heard this a little bit already, this process is much more efficient. Previously, when a campus wanted to bring forth a new academic program proposal, it typically took at least 1, if not 2 years from start to finish to get that approved. I was involved in some that took 3 years to get approved. And for the various reasons you've heard, and some I'll give you in a second, the process got very, very stretched out. And at a time when we need to be very nimble and we need to be able to respond to student interest, we're trying to get our student enrollment numbers up, market demands. We can't afford to have a process that's stretched out to that point. So we believe these changes will cut that timeline in half, and that's significant in being able to move things forward. Another thing that was problematic was the previous policy was not something that encouraged collaboration. It was in many ways a contentious sort of pitting campuses against each other with challenges of duplication, creating sort of a reaction from one campus feeling like they were potentially going to lose students to another campus. These changes really are much more proactive in bringing ideas forward earlier. Provosts propose these ideas to each other. We have informal discussions. We then look for collaborative opportunities with each other much earlier than we did previously. And we've already seen some evidence that this is working with some of the ideas that you've even heard this morning. We believe that this will create better resource sharing across the system, broader marketing across the entire system rather than just at one campus, and in general, a more collaborative, positive type of relationship from campus to campus with new academic program ideas. Another thing that we're much more clear about and prescriptive are the reasons why a campus needs to bring forward to object to a new proposal. In the past, it was kind of murky. If a campus was uncomfortable with a new academic proposal idea, they could bring forward just a level of discomfort. They didn't necessarily need to prove it or show it with data. The process now is much more data-driven. Concerns about enrollment impacts, concerns about budgetary commitments on certain campuses being compromised by activity on other campuses. We feel like we have a much better process in place with clarity, and that goes back to my first point. That moves this process along faster. In the past, the appeals process was one of the pieces that really stretched this out and extended it into that second or even third year. And then finally, the paperwork process was quite cumbersome. In the past, as Tracy showed, I think quite well, there were sort of 3 stages with the NOI and then the approval to plan and then the actual authorization to move forward with the new program. We've kind of brought those together They're still separate entities, but the work that goes into for instance, the notice of intent has been moved later in the process to make it more meaningful when we're ready to actually get into more details with budget, projected enrollment increases and so on. So we think this is also another reason why the workload will be reduced somewhat by the provost and others that do all these documents in the planning, the workload in the system office that has to review all this, and then ultimately the process itself will go from start to finish much quicker. And then finally, I think kind of a philosophical point, and one that might be the most important of all, the previous policy really had language that discouraged duplication. There was language in there about 50% overlap and concerns about this and that. And we've talked a lot about this issue of duplication and really come to an agreement as a group that duplication at this point in time is not a bad thing. In many ways, it's a good thing. If we're trying to raise the overall enrollments in the entire UW system, and we're trying to reach out to students that are on the margins of going to college or not, providing programs across many of our campuses throughout the system will make that decision much easier for them. Students nowadays may not want to go across the state for a specific major in one area. Certainly, we need to be aware of duplication for high-cost programs like engineering, nursing, and we have discussions built in for those types of things. But providing more duplicative opportunities for more students to reach the corners of all parts of the state, actually, we believe is good for raising the overall enrollment possibilities in the entire system. So thank you.
Thank you, David, as well as the rest of our panelists. With that, we'd like to open it up to the regents. And so we'll turn things over to you, Regent President Walsh, in terms of helping us answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much for that very informative presentation. Very much appreciated. Questions or comments from regents? Yes, Regent Rye.
I just want to say thank you for your adjustments to SIS 102, having been before a regent and lived through UWGB getting an engineering program and seeing that process and seeing these changes. Heartwarming to see the changes. I really did appreciate the dashboard, and I know the programs are out, and this is more of a request on an annual basis, and maybe we get it. We get a lot of information, and sometimes I don't read 100% of it, but it would be nice to get some sort of annual review of the programs added statewide, and then the programs that were paused or taken away statewide, so we'd understand, because we do get a lot of questions around workforce development, both online and offline as regents, and it'd be nice to know or be able to show the progress we're making towards, especially new programs, to answer workforce development as an aggregate from a system perspective. It'd be nice to get that report.
Thank you. Good idea. Other questions? Yes, Regent Atwell.
I agree. Thank you very much for the illumination. It's been very helpful. What happens when we eliminate a program? What are the implications for staff and for faculty? What are there changes as a result of that, or are resources simply redirected? What happens?
I can at least start that. I think one thing that maybe regents don't realize, and just others in general that aren't involved directly in the academics part of what we do, are most faculty teach to multiple academic programs. So when we think about eliminating a program, and of course we're dealing with tenure and other types of issues with faculty, I can tell you in my case, most of our faculty, if we were to eliminate a program, they would be redirected to the other programs at a higher level of commitment that they're already teaching to. A single class at a university typically serves multiple majors, not just one major. So that would be my approach to ensuring that these faculty are still contributing at the level that we need them to.
And I'd add to that there is a possibility and a reality on some campuses that once you do program elimination, that ends a program. And that can also cause a redirection of a person to another campus, or that can cause the end of a career. So that's a very serious decision that we make when we're eliminating programs. And I think in a lot of the comprehensives, what David said is very accurate. That would be true at Superior. We have a lot of redirection opportunity, but maybe that's why we go through such a careful multi-phase process, because at the end of the day, real people's careers and lives are affected by what we do. So it depends a little bit on the campus size too.
Okay, Regent Walks.
You were saying, Travis, that location.
My point primarily was duplication helps with recruitment. It may also, of course, help with retention because if a student finds a place that they're able to connect with on that particular campus, they're more likely to stay as well.
Thank you.
Other questions? Yes, Regent Jones.
Good morning. I was on the Education Committee for a couple of years, and I was always assured that there was a significant amount of due diligence done before a new program would come to us, but I never understood it. And I believed it, but I never understood it. Now I understand it much, much better, and I am very, very impressed. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I have a question. I think it was Tracy that enumerated this. My apologies if I misheard you. So the back end, the last phase of that program approval process, did I understand you to say it takes 3 years for that? No. Okay, someone straighten me out, please.
On system-wise, it's like a month, the final process, right, Tracy, when we get it, 2 months? But we want to even reduce that time.
Okay.
It takes just the longer time to negotiate, to get your program rolled out on a campus. That's what happened in the past. But at system itself, it's a month or two. And we even want to reduce that 2 months to a month for us to finalize the paperwork, get the president to sign off, bring it to the committee.
So what would be generally the fastest amount of time? Like I want to start a class in a brand new exploding area in data analysis. How quickly can I get that to market? Glenda Lee?
I would say a year is really the goal. And the reason is because although we can do different approvals quicker internally, we have to post information according to the Department of Education in bulletins and registrations so that when students are registering, they understand everything tied to that program. So bulletins on our campus are published on pretty rigid cycles to meet that really it's an accreditation requirement. But for us, I think when I first started in my capacity as Associate Provost of Curriculum, that was something I worked very closely with shared governance was, are we our own barrier here, right? When you have so many steps internally and really worked with the faculty. So we have kind of two different committees, one that's reviewing the notice of intent internally and one that's reviewing the curriculum. And what we've developed is a partnership. So those are basically routing simultaneously now, allowing us to get all of those conversations happening internally while things are processed. So for us, it's a year. So we will basically have all those approvals wrapped up by December, and we can launch the program the following August.
If I could add to that very quickly, this is like an iceberg, right? And we did not penetrate today down to the level of the amount of work it takes for the faculty or the subject matter experts on the ground to craft that, to design the courses, to think of a curriculum, to pull it all together, for campus administration then to negotiate in the shared governance approval process. That's all further under the waterline than what we talked about today. And that's partly what takes a lot of the time. System itself is pretty efficient in their part. And the thing that wasn't said today is that once those proposals, rise up and are put into the pool, either with provosts, but toward the end with system subject matter experts do an excellent job of looking at those proposals deeply and carefully. And there's a whole negotiation process that goes on between system at that point and the administration on new majors. We just recently, for example, created a major in public leadership and innovation. And we had everything prepared, all the months put in on the campus. And I remember it was a horrifying moment in a way, but we submitted it. It was my first major that we were submitting, so I was a little freaked about it anyway. But we submitted it, and Carleen Van de Zand at that point in time came back with 3 major league concerns that she had about the major. Now, she was dead on right. We had an opportunity to fix it. But without that flagging and without that care and due diligence that system also puts in to looking at those with an independent eye, we could wind up with, shoddy majors. So I really give a lot of credit to our system colleagues for the careful work they do to help us in that.
Thank you. Yes, Regent Tyler.
I'm just curious. I haven't heard a lot about, we talk about, the ideas bubbling up. Where do they start? Is it employers? Is it faculty? Is it students? I mean, how does it start? And if it's, I'm hoping it's employers. But what's the feedback loop? So they say, okay, we developed this new process. We need help educating around it. How do we make sure that it stays on track with what industry or healthcare or whatever the discipline needs?
So I can speak for UW Stout. I think that's one of the assets we have because we have program advisory committees comprised of employers that are hiring our students. We get together with them once a semester across all of our programs. So we're hearing what the changes, what the evolution is occurring in the workforce. But I would say the information comes from multiple sources because while that's happening in that conversation, our faculty are also participating and very active in professional organizations and in community organizations. And so they're also seeing evolutions. So we have sort of a convening of different aspects. But for UW Stout, the employer piece is just embedded in our communication process as well.
I would add and use the example of UW Extended Campus. So even at Parkside, that's had a tradition of serving adult students, 80% of our students have historically been traditional age students. So we really benefit from a unit that is regularly scanning the environment and looking for opportunities to offer new programs. And so we're in 10 completely online collaborative programs where the ideas for the programs have come from UW Extended Campus. And so they look at ideas, they look at market potential, they look at the number of competitive offerings currently serving those students, and then they evaluate workforce opportunities, and then they say, we would like to, offer a program in cybersecurity, who's interested? And those of us on our campuses that are interested, we're interested, and we jump in and we work on a program together. And a lot of times, we're not in a position as individual campuses, perhaps, to lift up an entire master's program, hire the faculty that would be necessary in advance of collecting any tuition money, to offer those programs. And so we found a good source of opportunities where the chance of being able to act on those opportunities and actually be able to lift up programs that succeed have benefited from that kind of channel.
Any other questions or comments from Regents? Yes, Regent Wellbeing.
Two things. Number one, I wanted to first publicly thank you, Regent President Walsh. You take the time to sit in on the education meetings. You saw a presentation of this in April, and you said, listen, I think the whole board would benefit from it, but we'd only be here today if it was because you take the time to sit in on those meetings and then decide to elevate it to the full board. So thank you for investing the time. Number two, and Regent Rye looks like he's getting some coffee right now, but just to respond to his comment, one of the outgrowths of that April meeting is we are now constructing a dashboard on our agenda that tracks programs added, programs on suspension, programs eliminated, so that we don't leave that sort of, as Regents, we don't leave that question undone. Because right now we just see, hey, what's the programs that we're adding this month? How do we sort of track that as the year progresses? And you saw from Tracy Davidson's presentation that we added, in the last 5 years, 150 programs. We're well aware of those because those get presented at every Regent meeting. What we don't get presented are which ones are suspended, which ones have been modified, which ones have been eliminated. So we're adding that as a dashboard to the education committee. And we'll certainly, to Regent Crosse, present that on an annual basis if helpful, but we're going to look at it on every Regent meeting basis in the education committee. Thank you.
Sounds good. Any other questions or comments? I just want to close and see you off with a comment that the value of this presentation, one of the many values, is that it really gives you a fuller picture of what it takes, what a course or a major goes through to actually get presented to our students as an option. The amount of work the faculty are doing, you as provosts, the staff that are working with all of you, It is an iceberg with a lot below it, which we really value even though we can't see it. So thank you so much for coming and sharing this with us today. Appreciate it. We will take about a 10-minute break now. See you in 10. 2023 academic year. Thank you. As you may recall, this was made possible by American Rescue Plan Act, the ARPA funding allocated by Governor Evers. We very much appreciate his support for our students, their education, and their all-important overall well-being. Our presenters today will share early data and campus-level impact of the implementation of 3 services that now supplement existing on-campus services. Regents will have an opportunity to ask questions about these new services, how they fit into the overall framework for addressing student mental health and well-being, and funding considerations once the ARPA funding comes to an end in 2025. And now I'll ask John Octor, Senior Director of Student Success and Wellbeing, to start us off and introduce his fellow presenters.
Thank you, Regent President Walsh, and thank you to the board for this opportunity to share some data in the first year of implementation of telemental health and well-being services. I'd also like to begin by thanking all of our health, counseling, and student affairs professionals who worked hard to implement and integrate these services into their campus services. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Renee Kirby, Director of Health, Counseling, and Accessibility Services at UW Parkside. She will show up on screen, I think, a little bit later. And also to my right, Riley McGrath, who is the Director of Counseling Services at UW Eau Claire. Both of these professionals were part of the team that reviewed and rated vendors for this 3-year contract, as well as instrumental in implementing the services on their campuses. And I would also like to thank Governor Evers for allocating American Rescue Plan Act funds for this effort, consistent with his commitment to aiding student mental health, but also the mental health of citizens in our state. So here are some of the details. Governor Evers allocated $5 million in ARPA funds to the UW system to support mental health. These are federal funds which need to be expended by 2025. In discussions with stakeholders, we identified 3 gaps that were in need of being filled to better address the current mental health needs presented by our students. The first was to have after-hours access, a support service that could be contacted during off hours and on weekends when immediate stressors can arise and on-campus professionals are not available. The second was an evidence-based online well-being platform that could help all students with the tools, skills, and referrals to manage their academic and personal lives in support of their mental health and well-being. And the third was telecounseling and telepsychiatry services to provide relief to overburdened campus services and to serve additional students who might not otherwise have access to services on their campus. So these are the 3 connected services that were implemented on 12 campuses, with the exception of UW-Madison that pursued its own telehealth supplemental contract with a telehealth provider. So on screen is an example of a marketing piece that was put together by our primary vendor, Mantra Health, to advertise the 3 services on campus. Every campus had one of these produced in their school colors for use in both digital and print media. I'll work from left to right to describe these services in a little more detail. So on the right is D.D. Hirsch. D.D. Hirsch is a 24/7 crisis services organization based in California that operates the largest call center for the national 988 crisis line. Through our partnership, we received a dedicated phone line and a web portal so students can call, text, or chat to speak with a crisis counselor. The service is branded UW Mental Health Support 24/7 and cross-linked in both of the other services that I'll speak about next. In the middle box is You at College, which is a comprehensive self-help and well-being platform that is also personalized to each campus. Students simply type u.theircampusextension.edu for access to the platform. U refers to itself as a digital front door to campus resources and to self-help content organized around 3 pillars: Succeed, Thrive, and Matter. These 3 pillars touch on academic and career topics, personal relationships, as well as mental health and well-being. Students set priorities, they take self-assessments, and then are directed to personalized resources both on campus and online that can help them reach their goals. In my opinion, this middle tool is the one that should get the most widespread use, as it seeks to meet students wherever they are in their personal journey and to move them forward. And finally, the lead vendor, Mantra Health, provides a service that most people associate with telehealth services: access to online sessions with licensed psychotherapists and psychiatric providers. Students can get connected in one of two ways: through a referral from campus health and mental health professionals who have access to a referral portal, or directly through a link that is posted on the U platform and on various campus websites. Within each platform, these services link to each other and are integrated with campus services to work toward a goal of achieving a no wrong door approach to student access to support and care. This is an example of what students see when they log into the U platform at UW Stout. You'll see the campus colors and logo at the top and campus-specific photos. So there's one of these pages made for every campus. You'll also see Help in Crisis button is always available on the top of the screen, which links to the 24/7 mental health support service. This is an example of what students see after they've logged in and set their priorities in the U platform. Note that the topic tiles have been personalized according to student selections made during onboarding. These are just 5 of several categories. On the left panel, you also see that campus resources are just a click away, as well as the link to Mantra Health through the Connect with a Therapist button. So what have we seen so far with utilization for all of these platforms? Beginning with U at College, we've seen just over 1,000 students registered and over 2,000 logins since the service went live for campuses in the spring semester. We would like to see the registration number as high as 20,000 or more by the end of the next year. And this is an arbitrary number that I picked based on some statistics from looking at population mental health data. But I really think we could hit that number to truly optimize its promise as more of an upstream and front door platform to get students the help that they are looking for. And our campuses are currently promoting these services in summer registration and will be again in fall orientation. For those who've logged in, the platform seems to be operating as intended. About 40% of the content that students have viewed thus far link them to campus-based resources, serving its purpose as a one-stop source to find help. Almost 200 referrals have been made in the U portal to Mantra through the Connect with a Therapist button that I showed a minute ago. And over 100 students have clicked on the Crisis button to be linked to the 24/7 support service. Finally, note that the top self-help content students are accessing are very practical things like de-stressing, healthy eating and exercise, academics and grades, mindfulness, and getting better sleep. Follow-up surveys with students accessing the platform indicate that over 2/3 have learned about a campus resource and learned a helpful tip or skill. Better yet, an even higher percentage of those students report taking action on what they've learned. Transitioning to the 24/7 mental health support service. You can see that the service began in November and December as our first cohort of campuses onboarded services. All campuses were live by the beginning of the spring semester and began marketing the service, which is why we see calls increasing in February through May. There were a total of 215 contacts since implementing the service through May, with top concerns looking much like the top concerns that students report to our counseling services: anxiety and stress, relationships, depression, school concerns, loneliness, and isolation. Of note on the graph is that 50% of students call the phone line, and the other 50% access the service through text or chat, which again speaks to meeting students where they are. I would also note that none of these calls resulted in a need for hospitalization, although specific protocols have been worked out on each campus should any call merit that level of a response. Now we transition to Mantra, the telecounseling and telepsychiatry service. I'm going to primarily focus on the telecounseling service today because the board has heard many times about the burden that we've had in meeting the counseling needs that students are wanting services on our campus. This slide shows a campus by campus breakdown of students who attended counseling on campus and through Mantra. They're expressed here in both raw numbers as well as percentage of the student body. The length of the blue bar shows the percentage of students on any given campus who accessed their campus counseling service in the last year. The length of the orange bar shows the additional percentage of students who accessed telecounseling through Mantra. Graphing the percentages helps us look at each campus on the same scale. So you'll see the actual numbers of the students served are listed on each bar, but the size of the bars are the percentage of students. If you slide your attention all the way to the right, you see that over 8,000 students attended counseling on their campus in 2022-23, and 710 were seen by Mantra services since they began. Given that the Mantra implementation wasn't completed on all campuses until late January, this is really depicting 2 semesters of campus services supplemented by 1 semester of telecounseling services. Combined, these 12 institutions served 8.2% of their student body through on-campus counseling. This compares to 8% last year, so the utilization rates continue to rise. With the addition of Mantra service, the percent served this year was 8.9, so nearly 1% more after a full semester of implementing telehealth service. So you can see this is truly a supplement to the services. It is still not the core service. Hi, Renee. See. You'll see that across campuses on the graph, anywhere from 3 to 13% of the student body access on-campus services. The variability in how many students receive service on any given campus is impacted by several variables, including staffing levels, percentage of students living on campus, and the culture around students seeking help. You can see here that Eau Claire, Oshkosh, River Falls, and Stout all saw 10% or more of their student body. And I'll note that those are among the schools whose staffing levels approach the national standard that's often recommended, which is 1 counselor for every 1,000 students. When assessing which campuses benefited most thus far from the addition of Mantra services, you look at the size of the orange bar, which indicates Eau Claire, Parkside, River Falls, Stevens Point, and Stout have all added between 1 and 2% percentage points to students receiving access to counseling services this last year. So another way to look at access to counseling is to consider sessions attended and how many sessions a student can attend. Because we know from the research that the greater number of sessions that someone can attend, the greater improvement they experience in the issues for which they sought help. Almost all university counseling centers across the nation and all within the UW system operate on some version of a short-term counseling model, meaning that care is offered to address the most common concerns and that students needing a higher level of care are referred elsewhere. Our telecounseling services operate under the same model, which means they have limits on the number of sessions students can attend as a part of the contract. This graph shows the total number of sessions attended on in-campus counseling services over the past year. It was over 42,000, and with Mantra, there was an additional 2,300. So I think the graph went away, but sessions attended divided by the number of students served gives us an average number of sessions attended. And you'll see that that was average of 5 for on-campus service and an average of 3 for Mantra services. I would expect that average to equalize more over the next year as Mantra services are available for a full year. An important criteria for choosing a telehealth vendor was that they could connect services to a provider, connect students to a provider relatively quickly and ease the wait time for campus-based services. When students have to wait weeks for services in the span of a 15-week semester, they do not get concerns addressed in a timely manner and sometimes don't get them addressed at all. Mantra has a goal of 7 days between the time a student signs in and completes paperwork in the portal to the date of their first appointment. This graph shows the data by month with an average thus far of 6.5 days, which meets the vendor's goals. This is very timely access for services in the mental health field. Two other criteria that were identified in the search for a telehealth vendor were to access a diverse range of providers and extended hours of services. In terms of diverse providers, nearly 48% of Mantra's counselors and psychiatric providers are non-white, and 45% identify as LGBTQ. We hope that this results in more students from diverse groups being willing to seek help. And early signs are that it does. If you can read the table on the right, it's a little bit small. We do see that higher percentage of students of color and LGBTQ students are accessing Mantra services as compared to campus services. We also sought to expand the availability of services after hours and have seen that 1/3 of Mantra appointments attended so far occurred on weekends or after 5 on weekdays. Finally, we wanted to ensure that services were available to students who do not typically come to campus, such as online students and to students who might be at home during breaks. Exceptions to the state healthcare laws during COVID that allowed providers to see clients in other states have come to an end, meaning that unless campus providers hold multiple state licenses, they can only see students in Wisconsin. So this slide shows that the vast majority of students were seen in Wisconsin, which we would expect. But note that 15 other states are represented thus far, with students residing in the bordering states of Minnesota and Illinois attending the most out-of-state appointments. So this completes my quick overview from a system perspective. Next, I would like to turn it over to Renee Kirby from UW Parkside to talk about the experience on their campus. Renee.
Thanks, John. Historically, Parkside has been a commuter campus with approximately 500 students who live in our residence halls. We were excited to partner with Mantra and opted to have students go directly to the portal to sign up. Mantra asked us to do a soft launch as we were in the first group of campuses to utilize the platform. We started November 7th of 2022. To market and publicize the platform, the Dean of Students Office sent emails to all enrolled students, and our campus marketing and communications team uploaded posters to social media. Our counseling center also created verbiage for our webpage and added a link. Next slide. The board has heard the recommended ratio of 1 counselor per 1,000 students by the International Accreditation of Counseling Services. And currently UW Parkside is funded for 2.5 FTE with an enrollment of approximately 4,000 students. This results in 1 counselor for approximately 1,600 students. This past year, our FTE decreased from 2.5 to 1.5 due to the death of a colleague. This resulted in a wait list, but during the soft launch, these students were able to obtain counseling through Mantra within that first week of the launch. Last year, our center saw 3% of the total student body, or 138 students, for a total of 1,147 appointments. Mantra has assisted students on our campus as a supplemental resource, as time to care for providers in our community can take 3 to 6 months. The slide on the right shows an example of one of our social media campaigns. Next, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Riley.
Thank you. So at UW Eau Claire, we were super excited about this service.
Could you move the mic a little closer to your mouth, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
So at UW Eau Claire, we were super excited about this service. As Renee mentioned, Parkside was in the first group to implement. Coming by November, we at Eau Claire were swamped. We felt like we were drowning, couldn't get many students in. We were actually supposed to be part of the third group implemented, but I reached out to UW System to see if we could move up, and then there was another school willing to swap spots so that we could be part of implementation group number 2. So there were 3 schools at a time that were implemented, and it was based on the ratio of counselors to students, how that was decided. We really needed it. We implemented right before Thanksgiving, that week before Thanksgiving. And we started by having the Dean of Students send out an email to all students, letting them know. So similar to what happened at Parkside, to let them know about the service. Also, when spring semester started, we had the Dean of Students do that again, just reminding them about this new service. We wanted to be really intentional to make sure that students knew this existed. There's so many things happening in our office that when I talk to students, they'll be like, oh, I had no idea. We had no idea that existed. So from our perspective, we wanted everyone to know this is here for you. For our office, if you're going to make your first appointment, the way you do that is from our website. There's an online scheduling link. And we put a Mantra online scheduling link right under ours and explain their service and said, if you'd like to be seen sooner for telehealth only, click here, and gave instructions to do that. We also were able to promote it on Canvas. So Canvas is the site that students go to log into their classes and upload homework assignments and things like that. They spend a lot of time on there. We were able to get a banner for 2 to 3 weeks that you can see on the slide there, promoting the service, giving them access to the link. So we were confident that based on all this, that students would know it existed. So a little bit about our office. There's 10 full-time counselors in my office and myself, and we have 3 part-time counselors. So we have an FTE just over about 10.5. Our utilization does not change based on when enrollment changes. So when enrollment goes down, our utilization has not gone down. It only changes based on staffing. So basically, we're always at capacity. If we're fully staffed, we can see the highest number of students. If we have staff on leave or other things that come up, we don't see as many students. Most years we see over 1,000 students. The last 10 years, we've seen 1,000 students every year for over 5,000 appointments. When you look at the ratio of staff to students, Eau Claire's in a really good place. You can see from the graph that John showed that we're right at that 1 to 1,000 ratio. But we also had the highest utilization of Mantra. 26% of the overall students seen by Mantra were UW Eau Claire students. I know that UW Eau Claire students were recognized for their engagement. And they were certainly highly engaged in this, which is awesome because we wanted them to be. We had some staffing things this fall semester. We had 2 staff on maternity leave and then a third in the spring. So those are the sort of things that we can't just bring in another counselor part-time to fill in when someone is out for 12 weeks. So this was something that was super helpful to have in that sense too. Usually around Thanksgiving time, there's a few weeks left when students come back to when winter break starts. Those appointments fill up before Thanksgiving. People schedule them 3 or 4 weeks out, and then those last 3 weeks of the semester, there's no appointments available. So having Mantra implemented at that time was super helpful because it gave access to students that would have either gotten 1 appointment or not been seen at all. And it's hard as a system, it's hard on the counselors, it's hard on me when we know that people have been waiting a long time and that we can't provide the service they're looking for. So it was it helped the counselors, it helped me feel more confident in what we could provide to the students. It also resulted in less drop-in crisis sessions for people that were waiting. We have a case manager who helps to connect students with off-campus resources if they'd like to be seen sooner or have different needs. You can see from the data there, 27 case management appointments in 2022, and we just had 11 last year. So because this was a super easy service to refer to, there was no need for a case management appointment. And that allowed our case manager then to see more individual clients. You can also see the impact it had on our wait for on-campus services. So in the fall, before we had Mantra, it was almost 17 days, which that includes weekends, so it's just under 3 weeks. But then this spring, it was only 9 days. So that tells me that people were finding ways to be seen through Mantra and through our office. 9 days is very, very, in my opinion, very good wait, especially as was mentioned earlier, it can be sometimes months in the community. So we were very happy to have this service and very proud of our students engaging in it.
Thank you, Riley. One of the things Riley said to me kind of early on in this process was, I know this service is intended to help students, but this really reduced my stress level. And you can see that in the data. As a former counseling director myself, I remember one of the biggest stressors was knowing that there were other students in need that you couldn't serve, or that you couldn't serve as well as you wanted to because of a backlog. And so this is one of the major benefits of starting a service like this. And students thus far are telling us they're satisfied as well. So this is just a snapshot of some feedback from students on the U at College platform. I highlighted a few here that just kind of emphasize the versatility, I think, of the platform. So a couple of excerpts. One student said, "This helped me gain courage to set up an appointment with a therapist." And another student said, "I like the idea that it's online because I've always been scared to talk to someone in person about things." So students have options. They don't have to use this as a gateway to the mantra services. And this is a snapshot of feedback so far on our mantra services. So a couple of questions that are asked of students after they see a provider: how well do you think you match with your provider? We have 94% saying they feel well matched. And how would you rate your visit overall? So far, the average is 4.9 out of 5. So they're almost topping out the scale. We ask similar questions for our on-campus services. That's been presented here before, and we see similar satisfaction with services. And you can read from some of the student narratives as well what they're saying about their satisfaction with these services. So I'm going to turn to questions in a minute, but I want to speak just to what we're thinking about as we turn toward next year. So one thing that I think we expect is to see utilization numbers rise for all three of these services as campus promote them further during this summer and also in the fall to new students. What will be important, especially to monitor, is how these services help during the most critical time for campus services, which tends to be October through December in the fall semester. And as we continue to monitor both utilization and impact, we also have to begin thinking about what place these services might have going forward and how we would pay for them after the ARPA funds run out in 2025. Just as a reminder, most campus-based services are funded through health fees or segregated fees that students pay. We have a few campuses, Parkside being one of them, that continue to have some GPR funds, but we need to find some level of a funding source or sources that help level the playing field, because you also see quite a variability in on-campus resources. And we want to help all campuses serve as many students as they want, as who want the resources to improve their mental health and well-being, because we know that that contributes to their student success. So with that, I'd like to thank you again and open it up for questions.
Great. Yes, Regent Peterson.
Thank you for this excellent presentation. It was really interesting, and it's so cool to have been here 5 years and to have this crisis of mental health that we've heard kids talk about, like it's several meetings, and to have such a timely and excellent response to it. It seems to me like a great solution, and I think I'm really impressed. Thank you.
Yes, Regent Bogus.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I'm just curious, in my line of work, I have many clients that want to see a therapist, and they really want to see someone that looks like them, and they refuse to go. As we know, in healthcare, diversity is really important, and it can be a matter of life or death, as we know in all areas of healthcare. So online is amazing, and I think it's filling a gap, but I'm just curious, because it's wonderful that Mantra has diversity in its therapists, but not everyone likes online, and I know we don't have that luxury of picking and choosing, but I'm just, from your graphs and everything, has there been any complaints about I can only do online because that, the therapist is someone that I choose to want to see? Any complaints about I can only get online and I'd rather be with someone in person?
Not that have bubbled up to me, but perhaps our two directors can speak to whether they've heard anything like that.
I've not heard any of those complaints, no.
And just
I've
to
met
follow up
either.
to, sorry, I'm sorry. Okay. Just to follow up to that, I was just wondering, with licensing, with the status, I know you have to be licensed in the state of Wisconsin to do telehealth, is that right?
Correct.
Was there any movement to try and change that, to get more therapists online?
There's some national movements to try to loosen the licensure laws and to allow more cross-state ability to provide services, but that's a slow-moving ship.
And just one final question, sorry. Is there a huge increase? I mean, do you see the funding's going to run out in 25, right? And now that you have this amazing service, I mean, we see that it's increasing, and as far as your predictions nationally and in the state of Wisconsin, the need for mental health is only increasing, correct? Yeah.
Thank you, Regent Rye.
Yeah, just a couple questions and just a point. When you talk about 9 days to wait for an appointment, I quickly messaged our director in Eau Claire and I said, if I had a new patient today, how long would it take me to get them in? It's 6 weeks into our mental health services in Eau Claire. So I want to congratulate you first. Just some questions about Mantra, more from a provider perspective. Occasionally, how are we coordinating when Mantra needs to do an in-town referral? You mentioned case management. So do they have a direct link into the campus's case management to communicate?
Yeah, so every UW system school that's using Mantra set up their own protocol with Mantra. So what Eau Claire decided was, if there's someone that you feel like is within 100 miles, because they could see someone who's somewhere else who's doing online student only or whatever, we obviously can't help with that person. But if they're within 100 miles, you can refer them back to our office. We'll meet with them and help get them connected with what their needs are.
You mentioned they're doing psychiatric services on top of counseling. So are they doing prescription services as well?
Yes, they are. And it's about 100 students that have taken advantage of that service so far. We didn't talk as much about that.
Okay, just want to make sure the full service. And then, so through case management, if we have a student with anxiety, they're able to then coordinate with the access center locally at the school for special needs as well. Thank you. And just a suggestion, as you probably are already doing it, but being a former House Fellow, resident administrator, whatever campus calls them, but is there training done for those that are in the housing to be able to plug a student into Mantra?
So this fall, I'll be meeting with all the hall directors and giving them a tutorial on how to do it, and then they'll pass that on to all the RAs.
Thank you. And I just once again want to congratulate you on the timing and the rollout of this. And Regent Bogus, I'd say it's a daily conversation between us and the federal officials about, especially in the world of mental health, to allow cross-state, and there are some exceptions coming, but we do lobby for this, like I said, almost on a daily basis right now in our profession.
Hey, thank you. I had a question. So I see toward the end of your presentation, you had some feedback from people who had used the services. Is one of the questions on that feedback form, how did you hear about this particular service?
That is a good question. I'm gonna ask our vendor the full range of questions. What I shared with you today was a snapshot that they shared with us in an end of year report. But I do know that I believe our on-campus service end of semester survey does ask a question like that. So you can kind of track where's the
Okay, I actually think those numbers are pretty important, and here's why. I have yet to meet a student in 4 years as a regent who regularly opens their email. They look at me like, that's for baby boomers, And yes, I do obsessively check my email, but they don't. So when people say, well, we marketed it by sending an email to every student, I kind of wonder, that's the tip of the iceberg, but there's, so I would really encourage you to try to find that number, find the avenues that work to communicate with those folks, because I don't think it's email.
Yeah, point well taken. Each campus was given a marketing toolkit, and the UAC College vendor has been in this space a little bit longer and has quite a comprehensive toolkit. And we asked them, what are the avenues that your students are telling you they most often find you through? And this is where the idea of a Canvas integration came up that Riley mentioned, because students are on that tool every day for their classes. So if they're seeing it there, it doesn't matter if they don't look at their email, right? So that was one of the examples that they said, if you can integrate there, you're going to see your utilization increase.
Evan, you're shaking your head. What are your thoughts on that?
It's very true. As a student, you don't always check your email. And when you get one from the Dean of Students, you kind of skim over it and be like, okay, sure. But I'm just being honest. Like, that's what most of my friends do. That's what I do. Sometimes I shouldn't. But Canvas, definitely. That's one platform that everybody should be looking at on a daily basis, because that is where your grades are, where your assignments are posted. So that is a great spot to have that.
Hey, Evan, I'd just like to know if you read your parents' emails at all.
It's emails?
Yeah. Do you have family members that email you?
No. If they did, they're crazy. Like they know to text me or to call me like this.
I have to send a text to my kids to tell them to read my email.
That's a good.
There are a lot of heads nodding in this room, Bob. I think you're not alone.
Well,
yes, Regent Rye.
Regent Bogos's point, and it's more of a suggestion for those who deal in telehealth and other specialties, is telehealth is great. It does provide a significant opportunity. Some of our students live in housing situations where they don't have the level of privacy that they would want to have. In our counseling centers, if we could set up a room to access Mantra, in almost an appointment base, it does alleviate some of that tension with the privacy associated with tele. And I'm not sure if you're already doing that, but as you roll from more campuses, to consider a little bit of infrastructure around that.
Well, that's a good point. Actually, I think both Riley and Renee could speak to whether they're still offering telehealth to from their campus-based services as well, to afford that privacy as well.
Yeah.
UW Parkside is. I'm sorry, Riley.
Go
UW
ahead,
Parkside
Renee.
is still offering a combination of in-person and telehealth, and we actually reserved a space on campus for students to be able to utilize for telehealth appointments, whether they're living on campus or not.
And yeah, similar to Renee, we offer whatever the student is most convenient for them. So to come in or to do telehealth through our office or through Mantra. We don't have, space is a big issue for us, just office space in general. So we've found that the library has like private study rooms you can rent, and we've recommended that for students that need a private space.
Other questions or comments from Regent? Yes, Regent Book.
Just going to add that it's really important. A lot of my clients don't even have, Wi-Fi to get online, so they'll drive to McDonald's or sit outside. But I've talked to students before who said they tried it and had to be outside, and so it's really, I can't emphasize Regent Rye's point enough to have privacy to be able to do it. So thank you.
Bogos, what that emphasizes for me too is that really a majority of students are still selecting in-person services, right? And that is going to continue to be the core. And when we think about going forward, if this is going to be a continuing contract, if we can find funds for it, we also need to make sure that our campus services have sufficient funding levels so that they can provide the services that students are most likely to access.
Okay, seeing no more questions or comments, thank you very much, all of you, Renee, Riley, and John. Very much appreciated. You're doing good work. Now it is my great pleasure to welcome back a former colleague, Regent Emeritus Rodney Pasch, as we formally recognize his service to the UW system. I would ask Regent Peterson to present the board's resolution of appreciation. Regent Peterson, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Regent President Walsh. I am very pleased to present this resolution of appreciation to Rodney Pasch, who has been a dedicated and thoughtful member of the Board of Regents for the past 2 years. Rodney is truly a Renaissance man who does everything from business and leadership consulting to building houses to guiding the Wisconsin Technical College System Board. I especially appreciated his insight during our UW Platteville Chancellor search. Rodney has always had insightful and specific ideas on many of the topics that the Board of Regents has grappled with. The following is the board's resolution of appreciation. Whereas Rodney Pasch has dedicated 2 years of exemplary service as a regent of the University of Wisconsin system from July 2021 through May 2023 as the president of the Wisconsin Technical College System Board. And whereas Rodney has worked to enhance the partnership of these two nationally recognized public higher education systems, both of which are critical to developing a highly skilled 21st century workforce for the state. And whereas Rodney has equally passionate about keeping UW's high quality education affordable for students, and whereas Rodney served as a thoughtful member of multiple committees, including the Education Committee, the Research, Economic Development and Innovation Committee, and the Capital Planning and Budget Committee. And whereas Rodney helped to honor and reward educators across the UW system for their work supporting student success through his service on the Academic Staff Excellence Awards Committee. And whereas Rodney, who grew up on a Wisconsin dairy farm, earned a bachelor's and master's degrees in industrial technology from UW-Platteville and a PhD in educational administration from UW-Madison, and his teaching experience includes teaching graduate courses in architectural design and industrial materials at UW-Platteville. And whereas Rodney helped to select new campus leadership for his alma mater as a member of the UW-Platteville Chancellor Search Committee, be it therefore resolved that the Board of Regents of the University of Wisconsin system hereby commends Rodney Pasch for his service to the UW system and outstanding commitment to education in Wisconsin.
Thank you so very much, Chris. I was going to ask you, as a fellow farmer, and Mark, also, if you could send some moisture down my way to the southern part of the state, because even though I don't have a mega farm like Chris does, my 40 acres of corn and soybeans are looking pretty tough, so I could use some moisture. I'd also like to thank Regent President Walsh and Vice President Bogus and all the regents for this recognition and the great discussions we've had in education over the last 2 years. As I drive to these meetings, I've often asked myself, why was I so fortunate to get a seat at the table in front of the room? One answer always comes to the forefront. The education I received from the University of Wisconsin systems played the major role. I spent my grade school years going to a one-room school where there were all 8 grades. On a high enrollment year, we probably had 12 to 13 students. I remember in 4th grade, the teacher called me to her desk in front of all his other students and said, "I see you're a little behind." I don't remember the rest of the discussion, but it certainly lit a spark in me to continue and put emphasis on learning. And it's still there today. I don't think there's any more important years in the school learning ladder than 1 through 4th grades. Somewhere between 5th and 8th grade, we seem to lose the spark in some of the students. that is never regained. State Superintendent Underlay, you have the toughest challenge in the educational ladder of learning. We often don't see the fruits of your efforts in the front page of the media or TV news, but I know the job you're doing is commendable. You're having success, and you and your team effort warrants recognitions. Stay with your plan. While we as Regents focus on 13 universities, you have 420 plus school districts and 840,000 students that depend on that education and sets the path for their future. Those of us in higher education, I should go back one step. Of those 480,000, they're on senior graduates, 60% approximately, I don't know what it is in Wisconsin, go on to college. Of those that go on to college, 40% drop out. It's a national statistic in the first year. We can't let that happen. Those of us in higher education should do much more to improve both those data points. The success of dual credit is an example of educational partnerships between systems that have led to increased college enrollments. There are more of those partnerships to be developed. To finish my story on my eighth grade my education, I did graduate from 8th grade. Big event. All the neighbors were there, whether they had students in the school or not. There wasn't, even the standing room only was full. But it reminds me we must always celebrate the steps that people take in their learning process, because it is extremely important. And to each individual, it is especially important. Chris mentioned my educational background, but our son is a graduate of UW-Whitewater, our daughter a graduate from UW-Stevens Point, and my wife a graduate of Marine Park Technical College. A family of success definitely due to the Wisconsin educational system. I should add a little ending to my grade school story. Years later, I met the teacher someplace, and I was recalling that conversation with me, and she started to smile and laugh, and she said, I was really talking about the rip in the seat of your pants that I had got cutting through the fence on a cow pasture on the way to school that morning. It worked. As I near the end of my tenure in higher education, I see the limitless opportunities in educational leadership that can do better serve students. I'm deeply envious of the people in this room and others I have met at campus locations around the state who provide that leadership. I'd like to use a sports analogy to share my observations. Of the 13 universities, we have 6 senior veteran All-Pros, 6 first round draft choices, and I believe another one in the making. We have a cadre of educational specialists, of intellectual and operational skills that are just waiting to improve our systems and processes. We have a new coach, I think probably a veteran coach, that is certainly offensive minded. And if you're wondering where I got the offensive part, you haven't been reading his communications out of his offices for the last 3 months. And if we get too far awry on our plans and our games, we have our own in-house umpire that can help straighten it out. You should know I'll be sitting in the bleachers watching this team to see if you're a winning team or you're simply content to play the game. There's an old saying that if you can't find your family picked, stand in front of the refrigerator, open the doors, turn around, and they'll be standing behind you. So my challenge to you is open wide the doors of this university focused on student learning. Remove the barriers of policy, process, and procedures that have been put in place over the last 175 years, all with good purpose, good intent, and relative for the times, but not so much now. If you have the strength, if you have the will and the strength of leadership to make those changes, turn around, and the line of students seeking to get in will be endless. It's a pleasure and an honor to have served on the University of Wisconsin System Board of Regents.
Rod, don't forget to take your plaques with you. Right. Finally, I would like to thank Chancellor Gao and his team for their hospitality during our time here and the perfect weather, by the way. I will now call upon Regent Manydeeds to read the board's resolution of appreciation to UW-La Crosse for hosting the July 2023 meeting.
Chancellor Gao. Joe, and before I shower you and the Eagle community with praise by way of this resolution, just a little advice for next time. Bigger coffee cups. Whereas the members of the Board of Regents are pleased to recognize the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse as the official host campus for the Board's July 2023 meeting, and are grateful for the generous hospitality extended this month by Chancellor Joe Gao and the entire Eagle community. And whereas the board appreciated hearing Chancellor Gao's presentation about the key to UWL's success, great partnerships and extraordinary people. And whereas the Education Committee thanks Provost Betsy Morgan for leading a presentation about the university's efforts related to in-demand health profession careers. And whereas the board learned more about how the university has extended its community engagement, resulting in a great workforce preparation for UWL students, as well as community access to expertise in areas from business management to scientific research. And whereas UW-La Crosse, in recognition of its efforts, earned the American Association of State Colleges and Universities 2022 Excellence in and Innovation Award for Civic Learning and Community Engagement. And whereas the board commends the broad business support of the Prairie Springs Science Center and congratulates the men and women's indoor track and field teams, which both won the NCAA Division III championship meets, making it the first time in NCAA history that a single school has won both of these national titles. And whereas the board was delighted to gather at the Cleary Alumni and Friends Center for a reception hosted by the campus, be it therefore resolved that the Board of Regents hereby thanks UW-La Crosse for its informative presentations, collaborative spirit, and many continued contributions to the UW system and to the state of Wisconsin. Thank you. No, it doesn't say Joe gets to come up and talk.
Just one thing, and the woman back by the door, Kelsey Foss, she is the one that deserves the accolades. Thank you, Kelsey. And also, I can't help but comment, I've been going to these meetings for almost 17 years. So I've heard a lot of speeches. And Regent Emeritus Pasch, that was beautiful what you said. It's really inspiring. Thank you. Thank you all.
And before we adjourn, do any regents have any communications, petitions, or memorials? Regent Bogust.
I just wanted to acknowledge and talk about a story that was reported yesterday in the Milwaukee Journal. And don't ask me any questions about it. And I know it's a really big deal, but I'm not sure I understand all of it. So it was also reported in the BBC and around the world. And it was a new study led by researchers at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. A massive detector at the IceCube Neutrino Observatory finally caught a glimpse of high energy neutrinos being emitted from within the Milky Way. The discovery is a step toward scientists being better able to use particles to study hidden or elusive phenomena in the universe rather than having to rely on light seen by telescopes. The team is led by UW-Madison professor Francis Halzen, the principal investigator of IceCube. The team consists of 350 people from 58 institutions worldwide, all led by UW-Madison. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. Just a quick story about Francis Halzen. Back a long, long time ago, he was my college physics teacher. And he always had a bonus question at the end of a test. And it was always something completely unrelated. But clearly he didn't know what he was dealing with in terms of trivia. So one question was, who was the first person to swim the English Channel? Well, of course it was Gertrude Ederle. I knew that. But I was the only person in the class that got it. So the next time he came with another question that he thought I couldn't get, which was, who played the piano player in Casablanca? Well, that was Dooley Wilson, who, by the way, didn't even play the piano I wrote at the bottom of my test. And he came up to me afterwards just jokingly and said, never take my class again. So he was a very good teacher, and congratulations to him and his team. Any other petitions, memorials, or college stories? Okay, better cut it off. Thank you very much, everyone, and we are adjourned.